Good evening. Welcome to the Edmonds Mayoral Debate. Do you remember when you were in high school and you would hang out at the friend's house with the coolest house? This is the coolest house. And we're all here. And how many of you helped build this house? Most of the hands should go up. Thank you. This is yours. So when we were scheming about this center and what it could become, one of the things that we centered on was how do you do things to promote civic engagement? That was a priority. And I will say, I can't think of anyone in the community who's done more to promote civic engagement than Teresa Whipple. No matter how you measure it, but one way you measure it is the number of hours, and you probably know how many hours at city council meetings. You just don't want to admit it. But let's give a warm welcome to your moderator, Teresa Whipple.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome, and thank you, Daniel, for that nice introduction. I'm just so excited to see everybody here because this is what we wanted, was to have this kind of participation. So thanks again for coming. I also want to thank our sponsors, of course, the Edmonds Waterfront Center for providing us with this lovely facility, the Edmonds Civic Roundtable for coordinating so much of this just in terms of the logistics, and of course my Edmonds News for doing everything else. And there are always some notes and reminders and disclaimers. So the first one is, if you could please reserve your clapping for the candidates for the beginning and the end of the program. It tends to make things a lot longer if we clap for every question or every answer. So if you could refrain from that, that would be helpful. Wanted to make sure that you knew that I, and I alone, wrote the questions for the candidates. None of the candidates or the campaigns have seen the questions, and members of the co-sponsoring organizations have not seen the questions, nor have they submitted any. The only questions we got, in addition to the ones that I was thinking of, were ones that came from people who submitted them via email, and as you walked in today, which we've tried our best to incorporate the ones that weren't duplicates. I wanted to say one thing. We did get some questions that were specific to one candidate or another. And the way this format is, I tried to keep the questions so that they applied to all. Their answers may be a little different depending on their situation, but again, for the time, just to make sure we were efficient, we did not have the ability to actually ask each candidate specific questions about things that you asked about. So my apologies in advance for that. That's a formatting thing on my end. So that's basically the ground rules. I'm going to invite the candidates to come up. They're actually going to be speaking in order of from 1 to 4, from Brad Shipley to Mike Rosen. They chose numbers before the program to see which order they would speak in, but I'm going to introduce them in reverse, so that's going to be really confusing, candidates. I'm sorry. So Mike Rosen. And Mike Nelson, and Diane Buckness, and Brad Shipley. Candidates, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to participate. And I wanted to remind you and the audience of the format. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement and a 2-minute closing statement. Answers to each question will be limited to 1 minute. We also have a few lightning round questions that are shorter answers, and I'll tell you how short those are, give you the time limit for those as we go. Each candidate will also be allowed 1 rebuttal, if desired, per question to another candidate's statement, and the rebuttal is limited to 45 seconds. And Edmonds Waterfront Center, actually 2 Edmonds Waterfront Center volunteers are timing the answers. And if you could demonstrate the buzzer that will occur when they reach the end, please. That's how you know you're done.
Wow.
We will be rotating among the candidates this way. The numbers that the candidates drew earlier will govern their speaking order. For the opening statement, we will start with number 1 and finish with number 4. And on the next question, we will start with number 2 and finish with 1. Just so you know, 2, 3, 4, 1, you get the idea. To ensure we stay on track, my Edmonds News writer and photographer, Misha Carter, will be reading as we go. And if she notices I get off order, she is going to firmly correct me so that we do not have that happen. This is going to keep us on track, we hope, and make it a good experience for all. So we will start now with opening statements, and we will begin with Brad Shipley. 1 minute.
All right. Well, thank you, My Edmonds News and Edmonds Civic Roundtable for hosting us tonight. I do see a lot of familiar faces here, and really I can't think of a more important time than right now to talk about, for us to have a conversation about Edmonds' future. We are at a defining moment in the city's history. With upcoming growth, the need to address growing inequities, political climate that has much room for improvement, people are wondering, how's this going to affect me? How's this going to affect my house? How does it affect my kids? How are we going to protect what matters most? As a previous city employee, I've been working on these issues for over 10 years. And I know many of these issues on a very deep level. We must move forward thoughtfully and wisely, and I have a series of priorities that will make sure that Edmonds remains a place that provides a high quality of life and opportunity for all. Planning and running of day-to-day improvements to make our cities.
That was it.
That was it.
Now you know how it works. Thank you. Ms. Buckness,
Thank
you're
you.
next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diane Buckness, and I want to be your next mayor. I want to thank Teresa Whipple and My Edmonds News, the Edmonds Waterfront Center, and the Edmonds Civic Roundtable for this venue tonight because it helps you understand each of us candidates. I believe that Edmonds is at a crucial stage where we must put the voices of citizens back on top of the organizational chart. And internally, we must communicate cooperatively within all the sectors of local and regional governments. I have been honored to sit on the council for 13 years, making my institutional knowledge very valuable, and it has prepared me to be your mayor. This past decade, I've garnered contacts from federal, state, regional agencies, and communities, and these contacts, too, will help us as we move forward in the future. My number one goal is community interest comes first.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Today, Edmonds is more connected, safer, our businesses are thriving, our environment is more protected. First, I want to thank everyone for working together to get us through the pandemic. When we started, we had 3 priorities. More livable. Thanks to the modernization of our police department, more officers and community engagement, crime in our city is down. Thanks to our unprecedented city support to our small businesses during COVID, sales tax receipts are the highest they have ever been. More open. We created a neighborhood city hall, new city newsletters, citywide surveys, communicated in more languages than ever, and taking care of people long ignored. We created a human services department helping our most vulnerable residents, and the first to support and elevate celebrating Juneteenth, Lunar New Year, and Pride. I look forward to sharing with you my vision for the next 4 years to become a more walkable community, more parks and open spaces, and continue investments along Highway 99.
Thank you. No buzzer. Congratulations. Mr. Rosen.
Thank you to our host, and thank you all for coming. I do realize it's kind of weird having 2 people with the same name running for the same office, and I know it's even more confusing because we look so much alike, but I'm Rosen, he's Nelson. I think we're at a unique time when I think we need a mayor with a very unique combination of skills and experience to navigate through these unique times. I've managed hundreds of staff, multi-million-dollar budgets, and hundreds of projects getting done simultaneously. I'm a past chair of the planning board. I'm vice president of ECA. I've been on the board of Operation Military Family. I served on the task force to save the chamber. I'm honored to have been trusted by organizations such as Nike, Starbucks, EPA, CDC, and literally hundreds of government agencies, large and small, all over the country, and a whole lot of them in the state. I'm a problem solver, and we have 2 or 3 in Edmonds, and I hope to earn your trust and your vote.
Thank you. All right, we'll go on to our first question, and as I mentioned, we're going to start with the answer for candidate 2, so be prepared for that one, Ms. Buckshness. The question is this: the state legislature during its last session approved several bills that mandate increased housing density statewide, yet there are concerns that Edmonds doesn't have the infrastructure to support this greater density. 2 questions. As mayor, how will you and your staff address these changes? And how will you balance this new requirement with concerns from some residents that such density impacts the character of existing neighborhoods, or as someone said, what makes Edmonds, Edmonds?
Thank you. This is a hot topic, and I did in fact write a letter to the governor telling him to veto House Bill 1110. I am concerned, but the big thing that we need to realize is that we do have infrastructure problems and we do have sewer problems. We also need to look at the tremendous growth that is happening in Shoreline, Montlake Terrace, and Edmonds. We have 1,000 units coming on board. And basically, I plan on doing a very thoughtful planning and bringing the Housing Commission recommendations off of the shelf and look at multifamily standards, creating a task force for various housing units like duplex, triplex, fourplex, and trying to keep Edmonds the way it is. But the most important thing we need to realize is that we do have infrastructure problems, and there is limitations in the Housing Bill 1110 to deal with the fact that if we do have sewer problems, we need to really be conscientious of that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nelson?
Thank you. I joined with the council president and the council in asking that the legislature please postpone several years those bills so that we could work on this, because I believe that we, our city, should plan best, know how best to guide our growth. I personally have been trying to focus our investment and concentration on Highway 99. In fact, this morning we announced the potential to create a landmark 10-acre site where Burlington Coat Factory used to be, as a potential city land acquisition. So that's really been the focus when I was as mayor, and will continue to be the focus moving forward. I think that we have a significant amount of time. I don't believe these things take effect until 2025. So there's a lot of planning, a lot of things we can go back to the legislature for to make changes. So it's going to be a long, slow process, and the reality of it is where we're seeing the growth is where there's light rail stations. And Edmonds does not have one, as you know. If you go to Marysville, if you go to Linwood, you can see exceptional growth. And I don't believe Edmonds is going to be growing anywhere near that capacity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosen?
I too was part of the choir saying to the state, please, not here, not now, we've got this. Do I believe more people are coming? Yes. Do I believe we can accommodate them? Yes. Do I think there are things we can do to make it more affordable and not mess up our character? Yes. So I'm not a happy guy with what the state did, but that's now what we have to deal with. Infrastructure is a problem. We should be looking at other places in the country that have been doing this already and learn from what they've learned from, and we need to use every tool in the toolbox to talk with the state about, we don't have the infrastructure now. We do need financing to help with that. So we do need to use all those resources, and there are places in the city that we are working to advance these kinds of housing options for people, and we can do more. But I gotta believe what's off the table is screwing this place up.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, so I'll come at this maybe a little bit differently. I come at this from a property rights viewpoint. If I want to be able to provide a house or a place for my mom to stay when she's older, or my kids when they get out of college, I should be able to do that. I think it's a property rights issue. But I also think that there's ways to do it that protect the character. I don't necessarily think just because you have a couple more units that it's going to destroy the character, as long as we get the form right. And regarding some of the infrastructure issues, I know the main issue is that we have a nitrogen level that we can't add at a certain point, and we don't really quite have those figures yet, so it's not necessarily a capacity issue, it's a regulatory issue in terms of how much nitrogen could go out. When we talk about form and the form of buildings, I think a form-based approach would actually really work and probably alleviate a lot of the concerns people have. Now, if you don't know what form-based is, typical zoning is use-based. Form-based is form-based.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll go on to the next question. And for this one, we will start with Mr. Nelson. So here's the question. I'd like to follow up with a related housing question. There are concerns that the increased housing density mandated by the state doesn't address the housing needs for those with moderate or low incomes. As mayor, what would be your approach to address this need?
Well, I think that, the housing crisis is based on a supply and demand issue. There's too much demand and there's not enough supply. So the way you offset that is provide more supply. And when you look at where is there buildable land opportunities, the Highway 99 corridor really is the area that has the most potential, the most wide vacant or not utilized to the best pieces of land. I know that we've done studies that something like 2,000 different homes could be, residences could be housed in that corridor. So it's an area that I would like to really, and again, we've tried to incentivize that. We've updated the Bay Area plan so we can increase all different types of housing types, and I think that's a great way to, again, provide a lot more volume in a confined area that really does not have those opportunities right now, and will have a lot of wonderful infrastructure investments moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen?
We have expensive dirt here in Edmonds, and it's only going to get more expensive. As climate change happens, more and more people are going to come where the water is and the trees are. So what we've been talking about is absolutely true. It is a supply and demand issue, and looking at places where we can do it, we should be doing it, and Brad's conversation about different types of form-based building makes a lot of sense. We also should be looking at this regionally. There are a lot of issues that are regional issue. Housing is one of them, food insecurity, a number of them. And so we should be working with the region so that we're doing this together to look at housing options. But ultimately, it's expensive dirt. And one of our secret sauces is old, small houses, right? Those are always going to be less expensive than big, brand new, even if they're small houses. So how can we preserve that kind of inventory as well?
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Would you mind repeating the question?
I am happy to do that. And for all of you, anytime, just let me know. There are concerns that the increased housing density mandated by the state doesn't address the housing needs for those with moderate or low incomes. As mayor, what would be your approach to address this need?
Okay, well, I could say we're already required to plan for all different income levels. That was HB 1220. That passed maybe 2 years ago, I believe. So it's part of our comp plan update. It's something that we're already planning for. Now, there's ways that we could approach, and I hope that this is a part of the comp plan update, is that we're actually doing pro formas for the different building types that could be built. So we know how much those cost, and we're actually able to target certain price levels within that. So yes, the economics of land development is expensive, but when you say you could only build one house on it, they're going to maximize that out. So why do you get these big mansions on every lot? That's why. That's their improvement. That's where the value is, and that's where they make their money. I'm not going to fault the developer for that. I think that's just, capitalism. But we have our ability to really make sure that the form is correct and really go through some of the building types. I think we're good.
Thank you. Ms. Bechness?
Thank you. We have a serious issue with our code. Our code does not address duplex, triplex, cottage housing, things of that nature. So that needs to be implemented and updated. Also, like Brad was saying, we do have a 5 corners form-based code project that came out from the University of Washington about 10 years ago that has been shelved. So we need to bring that out because it does address this middle housing. There's also money in Housing Bill 1590, which is in Snohomish County, and we have met with the people from Housing Authority of Snohomish County to talk about ways in which we can partner with regional people in order to try and get them, because they will be getting the money, and we want to try and make that middle housing happen through like maybe cottage housing or duplex, triplex, things of that nature. But again, our code needs to be updated. But yes, we do have expensive dirt. I'm concerned that we're pushing everything up to Highway 99.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to have our first lightning round, and these are meant to be short, quick answers. So we just are really allocating for this one 5 seconds, but if it takes you a little bit more, it's okay. So here's the, well, we'll cut you a little slack if you go over 5 seconds. So this one will start with Mr. Rosen, and the question is, name the top 3 organizations, not individuals, defined by dollar amount, who have made financial donations to your mayoral campaign.
5 individuals, not organizations?
3.
3.
Top 3. Okay, we're going to give you a little bit more time. Let's make it 10 timers.
Is it individuals or organizations? Yeah.
Organizations.
Organizations?
Top
None.
3 organizations.
None.
None. Okay. All right.
None that I know of.
None. Okay. So now we go on to Mr. Shipley.
None.
Ms. Buckshness?
None.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes, I want to say healthcare workers, SEIU 1199, and also the firefighters.
Okay, thank you. Now we know how long we need to allocate for that. Thanks. Thank you. We're kind of working some of this out as we go along. I appreciate your patience. All right, question 3, and this one will start with Mr. Shipley. Communication has been mentioned consistently as a key issue in the mayor's race, and in fact, it's the question I got most from the questions that were submitted, and a few tonight as well. Residents say they want a mayor who is transparent, who answers emails, and who communicates regularly with all residents. Please describe your commitment as mayor to citywide community engagement, and again, we'll start with Mr. Shipley.
That's a great question. It's something that's been on my mind quite a bit. I think that there's a lot of things that we could do. One, we really have to go through and update the way that we send information out. We've relied on My Edmonds News for a long time and the Beacon, which are great, but if you look around this room, it's not very diverse. I think we just have to be honest about that. So language access is really important. I think we should try new things and willing to try new things that may or may not work. I think we need a partner with some of the leaders of groups that we'd actually like to be able to engage with. I'm not here, my whole platform is about building an Edmonds for everybody. I'm not about pitting one side against the other or stirring up controversy just for the sake of press. I don't think that that's very useful. So I think I labeled or named the few things that I would do. Those are there.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Buckshness?
Well, everybody in this room knows I'm an extrovert, and I answer all of my emails, and I've done that for 13 years. I've had town hall meetings in all areas of the city. I believe that communication is key, and if I'm mayor, I'm going to create a number of task force to deal with serious issues that we have right now in this city. And I believe that communication is key, and that in order for us to do that, we do need to be transparent with our numbers. We need to be accountable to the numbers that we see in our balance sheet, in our revenues, and our expenses, and that's stuff we're not seeing. And basically, answering an email. I mean, I know it takes me a couple hours a day sometimes every morning, but I feel that if people take the time to write to me and tell me what they're feeling, they want to be heard. And that's the biggest thing that I find happening now, is people do not feel they are heard, which is why I think we need to flip that organizational chart and put citizens at the top.
Sorry, was that me? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So when I first became mayor, I had neighborhood meetings, and it was wonderful, and then COVID hit. And for 19 months, not only could we not meet in groups, for 19 months we couldn't even be within 6 feet with each other. It was beyond challenging to find ways to communicate. Doing it on Zoom, on virtual meetings, is not the same as being here in person with all of you. So it has been challenged, no question about it. But that being said, we have done unprecedented outreach compared to previous years. We've mailed over 200,000 city newsletters, city surveys, postcards, communicated on numerous city projects, and most importantly, we've been doing it in multiple languages that has never been done before. So again and again, as a matter of course. Moving forward, could we improve on it? Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to having more in-person neighborhood meetings again. You bet I'm going to. Am I terrible about emailing? Yes.
It's always something. All right, so now we are on to Mr. Rosen.
This is what I do. My entire professional career has been about communication and using different tools. And we are a very diverse community, and the people who built City Hall probably don't feel comfortable walking into it to talk to us. We need to be agnostic to process and establish processes where people are comfortable giving us input. It's not just about listening, it's hearing. Since I first started thinking about running for mayor, I've had over 400 cups of coffee. I've met with 40 organizations to understand what they're doing, been to 70 community events to listen. If somebody wants to talk to us at 2 o'clock in the morning from their bed, we gotta have a way for them to do that. And it can't be confusing. We can't have council and the mayor and the staff using different tools, because you need to understand that, one, what's going on? How do I have an input? Did they hear me? Did they respect me? How is the decision gonna be made, right? We need to and to understand that we're not gonna always get what we want. We don't manage expectations very well. So we need to use lots of tools and lots of languages.
Thank you very much.
Damn, I had so much more to say.
Okay, on to question number 4, and this one will go first to Ms. Buckness. Some have said that there appears to be an us versus them attitude between the administration and the city council. During the past few years, the mayor has accused the council of bullying city staff, while the council has accused the mayor of not being willing to work with council members to improve communication. While it is natural to expect some tension between the executive and legislative branches of government, how do you propose moving forward to improve mayor-council relations?
Well, obviously, since I've been on council for 13 years, I have mapped my path to be mayor. I believe that it's very important to have that cooperation between council and the legislative and administrative and the regional legislative and administrative people. I guess I've said I am very keyed in and tuned in to many of the regional people that I've talked to, Snohomish County, things like that, and different cities. So my basic premise is that I'm going to have an open door. If people want to come and talk to me, I'm going to have task force for a number of areas, because we have a number of areas like code update, our watersheds, our housing. We have serious issues that need to be addressed. And in order to do that, we'll need to have task force, and task force do include legislative and staff. So I have no problem moving forward. I think that we will be moving in a great direction, because we have yet to really see.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, I think that we have had, being a former city council member and now being mayor, it's a great way to sort of see that there's always going to be a natural tension, right? It's why we have separation of government. We have different branches of government. We have the legislative, we have the executive. But when you actually look at what we accomplish, when you actually look at the fact that every year we pass a balanced budget, when we look forward that the things that I put forward, 95% of them are approved by our city council. So at the end of the day, we're actually very highly functioning, work well. I think obviously, unfortunately, sometimes people love to magnify when we do disagree, which again is healthy if it's done respectfully. But this morning I was standing at a press conference with my former opponent, who's running for mayor, is a council president, and we've had a wonderful working relationship. And we're looking forward to many collaborative opportunities with the council moving forward in the next 4 years.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosen?
I think what you described in your question goes to the heart of a lot of what's going on, that there has been a loss of trust, and I think that the lost trust also is part of why the noise level is as high as it is. This is a four-legged stool. There is the mayor, there is the council, there is the staff, and there is the community. And right now, I don't think that we're playing well together. I think that I have done an awful lot of facilitation, working with people who actually would not like to be in the same room together. Sometimes it's more of an exorcism. But this is the kind of thing I've done in the past. And you asked, how can we improve this in the future? Well, there's an election coming up. Just saying. Thanks for the opening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shipley?
All right, 1 minute. You know, as someone who's been on staff for a long time, I've seen this firsthand. I know where the communications have been breaking down. The thing is, I've worked for years to establish relationships with, you know, folks on council and the administration to find commonality, find common ground. You know, we don't have to argue about everything. It's not necessarily a binary kind of system here. We need to be able to understand where other people have their values, understand that we're going to have different values, but how do we find commonality in that? And I think that's where we all really have to work together. So I think starting from a place where of trust, as Mr. Rosen brought up, is very important, but also you have to do that work every single day in order to build that trust. So it doesn't just show up. So, you know, I really want to get away from this binary kind of us versus them type approach and really find ways to.
You can finish those last two words if you'd like.
I really want to find ways just for us to work more efficiently and better together and actually have better outcomes.
Thank you. All right. On to question 5. Edmonds is becoming, and this will go to Mr. Nelson first. Edmonds is becoming increasingly diverse, especially in neighborhoods outside the bowl. As mayor, describe your plan to reach communities that are often underserved by city government and ensuring their voices are included, and in particular, younger people, the youth of the area.
Yeah, so when we, for example, worked on our PROS plan, which is an update of our city parks planning for the next 7 to 8 years, we went to places where youth were at. We went to the ferry, we went to downtown, we went to the beach. Our staff went to the Uptown Market. They went actually where youth were, and they also did targeted outreach to those people who did speak different languages, who had never gotten city communications for them before. And so we have done that, and unfortunately, we didn't get the response we needed because it had never been done before. So we learned from that, and we're continuing to build on that. And through every outreach effort that we're doing, it's only getting bigger and bigger and more contact. And of course, we're recognizing all the different unique people that in our community. So that's why we, for the first time now, celebrate Lunar New Year here in our city. We now actually have a Pride event. We actually have a Juneteenth event. We are recognizing those people who haven't had a voice.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds kind of like a reprise of my.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen? I don't need you, Misha. They have my back.
I can stand over there.
Thank you.
This isn't new stuff. No, granted, nobody in the country has nailed this, but I've been doing it for over 30 years for hundreds of organizations around the country. And we are a diverse community, and it's not just geographic, and it's not just language, though there are 130 languages in our public schools. What you have to do, we have people who are old and young, single family, multifamily, people with money, without money, people who have cognitive challenges, right? We are diverse in a lot of ways. So we need to be reaching out through all those lenses. So when we did work, we go to where those people are, where they're comfortable, and we would hire people who lived in that community, who were friendly, who knew them, could talk their language, and who they felt safe to, in places they felt safe. In a large urban area, if you wanted to read African-American men, sometimes we had to go to the barbershop. So you have to use the tools that are appropriate to the audience, and it's not just a geographic issue. And to the age thing, we have done about as much as we could do to make running for office as unattractive as possible. And we have to create a path where it's not people who look like me that are running.
Thank you. All right, now Mr. Shipley.
All right, so where I started is, back in 2019, this was a big part of my campaign. I have been on the forefront of a lot of the communications that we've had to implement. Now, I can tell you the challenge right now is a staffing issue. It's a professionalism issue of communications these days requires a professional to do it. It's someone who is trained in that and understands the nuances and the things that have to happen. Right now, we've been relying on either planning staff or a park staff member or someone from engineering to do that work while they're also doing their other work. And it's not effective because we don't have the proper staffing for it. So I hope this go around we will actually get staffing for a communications team, starting there, but actually in terms of outreach, we need, as it's already been mentioned, we need to meet people where they are. That's where we had a lot of traction last time by actually going out to the farmers markets, going out to the different events that were going on, going out to the street fairs, and just talking to people where they were at.
Thank you very much. Ms. Buckshess.
Yeah, this to me is all about volunteering and really understanding the community. And as I've said before, I've had like over a dozen town hall meetings over the 13 years, and they've been at Furdale, Perrinville, Highway 99. I think what's important though is that we have new nonprofits, Asian Service Center, Lift Every Voice, that actually are in the incubator stage, and people like the Floridum Garden Club that's been around for 100 years, or Rotary, we need to start sharing and networking those new nonprofits so that we can all work together to create a community that is more diverse and inclusive. And this is something that I have really on my agenda, because volunteering is really a gift given to us by citizens, and I think that that's important. I do want to say that our mayor has done a really good job in terms of the communication and using various languages, so I do believe that he does get credit for that, but I would continue doing that when I am mayor.
Thank you. You guys are getting really good at this.
Well, you can see her doing that.
Oh, you figured out the secret.
I have figured out the secret.
I haven't yet. I'm oblivious.
All right, on to the next question, and this one we will start with Mr. Rosen. While many view Edmonds as a wealthy city, we are facing the same challenges as other communities. Food insecurity is increasing, with the Edmonds Food Bank now surveying 850 households weekly. We have unhoused individuals, tents, and shopping carts. Our citizens and our police are dealing with the impacts of an opioid epidemic, including public drug use and increased property crimes. As mayor, how would you address these issues?
Those are a lot of issues, and the solution is not all the same, and they are big issues. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, we have a lot of organizations doing a lot of good work. They don't all sit in the room together to deal with it. When it comes to housing, we also don't separate the issues. The woman who is escaping an abusive situation is different than the person who is just lost their job and needs like 8 weeks to get back on their feet. We need to separate it into different issues. This is also a regional issue, and we should be sitting at the table with regional players and organizations to work the problem, because it would be silly for us to do this on our own. Fentanyl is a problem, and I don't think we're anywhere near hitting the peak of that problem. So we have to have, you can't put them in a cell because that's not going to cure them. We have to make sure that there are full services available to people so that we can help them get off the addiction. But if you're addicted to fentanyl, all you're worried about is the next hit, and we have to help people through that. Otherwise, it's just going to be a round trip.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley.
Right. This is a huge issue, and it is multidimensional, as it was already mentioned. 1 in 3 households is spending way more than they should on housing, and housing is not the only issue. There is drug abuse, there is some of the domestic violence, a lot of other issues, and those all have to be tackled individually depending upon those situations. We do partner with a lot of regional partners, and I want to recognize some of those. I think that they are very key players in this process. The Edmonds Food Bank, serving a ton of meals every single week. So the issue is multidimensional. It's really hard to get into it within 1 minute, but I just think you have to have an approach that works for the broad range of issues that we're dealing with.
Thank you. Ms. Buckshus?
Yes, it is multi-dimensional. One thing we keep forgetting to look at is that Housing Bill 1590, which was passed last year, actually is putting money, sales tax money, specifically for issues like affordable housing and homelessness and issues relating to food insecurities, things of that nature. We do need to regionalize and make sure that we understand that, you know, we are Snohomish County, so we should get a little piece of that pie of sales tax that is coming into this. I do know that right now they're still planning on the business plan for it, but it is very multidimensional. I do want to appreciate that the Edmonds Waterfront Center does in fact deal with food insecurities, and they do give individuals that cannot afford a meal to eat daily. So it's something that we need to really understand, and it's just really too hard to say in 1 minute what to do.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, so we have to have both a proactive and a reactive approach. When I became mayor, to try to be proactive, we created a human services department. We brought on Compass Health and partnered with them. They brought on a social worker who we now have going out with our police, sometimes without our police. They're proactively, they're out up on Highway 99, they're working out of our neighborhood city hall. They've helped over 500 Edmonds people with city services, a variety of services, a variety of wraparound help. During COVID, we helped over 700 families who are income-based with rent, utilities. We helped fund things that other cities did not, because we were trying to keep, you know, people not only from who are homeless, but also preventing people to become homeless. It is a role that city government has to be in. We can't ignore it. We all have a role to play. Yes, we need to partner, but we also need to acknowledge that we can't just ignore people who are struggling, who are poor, and not criminalize them just because they're poor in our society.
Thank you very much. On to question 7. And this will be Mr. Shipley who replies to this one first. In 2019, the City Council decided not to pursue a waterfront connector project to provide emergency access over the train tracks. However, concerns about emergency access remain. Explain what steps you would take regarding this public safety challenge.
We have to work with the fire department to figure out how to have some services over here in case of an emergency. So you'll be working with our emergency services folks and our police department to figure that out. You know, I think any long-term solution is going to require a lot more thought and a lot more planning and a lot more work with the community to figure out what would work for a long-term solution. But immediately, we need to be working with our firefighters and our emergency service folks to make sure that we have some life-saving measures on this side of the tracks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Buckshus?
Yeah, I want to ditto that, what Brad just said, but I also think that we need to be maybe more creative in how we look at things. They do make now emergency vehicles that actually are like a pedestrian overpass that they can transfer over the railroad tracks. I know a few years ago they wanted to do a pedestrian overpass to the ferry so that people can walk over to the ferry rather than have to wait for the train tracks to go. So there are a variety of alternatives to do. The fact that the connector was moving right into a natural preserve was not something that many people wanted, which we all found out what happened. But basically, I think it's important that we do look at all alternatives, the fire department, the police department, the Waterfront Center here, if they can house something, which I do know they have medical people here sometimes. So it is something that we need to look at, but we need to look at it as a community, and we need to make sure everybody is inputted, provides their input.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, I mean, and I was one of the people that obviously was against the bridge to nowhere. I think that, you know, when you're talking about infrastructure dollars and where there's actual need and transportation safety and access, emergency access. The most dangerous place is not on the other side of the train tracks. It's on any given road in Edmonds that doesn't have a safe place to walk. So we need to make sure that we are connecting all of our parks with all of our schools and prioritizing those precious infrastructure dollars to protect our most vulnerable, who are every day at risk. As far as this side of the pre-positioning equipment, the fire department or police department have all planned for various different scenarios and how to get to the other side if need be. But those really need to also make sure that people understand where the real dangers and threats are. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen?
Safety should be all of our number one concern. It should always cut in line. And the mayor is right. You have to make choices. What's the likelihood? What's the severity? And make decisions based on that. It's not just health issues, right? There's crime, there's health, there's fire. There could be a horrible, dangerous spill that goes on over here. So the likelihood is going to get higher and higher. More people are over there. Look at the profile in the room. There's health issues going on a lot now. If they do put in the double track, it's going to increase the odds. I've walked the path with the consultant twice who came up with the over 50 recommendations to start looking at what might be viable or not viable. So I think there are options, and Diane said as well, the hardware might be different and the structures might be different, but the community has to be engaged in what that final answer is, but I believe we do need to address it.
Thank you very much. All right, on to the next question, and this we'll start with Ms. Buckness on this one. The City of Edmonds has reported robust tax revenues in recent years and has also increased city spending to fund a growing list of priorities. Yet during a recent City Council budget retreat, there were discussions about a possible future public safety levy. Describe how you will balance the growing list of budget wants versus being a steward of taxpayer dollars.
Well, any of you that have followed me know that I'm a watchdog about the finances. It's important that, because I was part of the 2010 levy committee, and remember all three levies failed terribly. And that was because the administration, Mayor Cooper, didn't want to do a levy, so, it has to be something that everybody joins in doing. I am more concerned about the accuracy and accountability of our finances right now. We have asked for many financial projections to be accurate. There are ways that I'm going to address this, and that when I become mayor, I'm going to move to budgeting by priorities. That is something I've been wanting to have since like 2014 when Finance Director Sean Hunstock was here. And it's something that allows the citizens to be part of the entire budgeting process. But in terms of the levy, I don't know the numbers well enough to say I would go for it or not.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, I think that, sorry, what was the question?
It was a long one, I'll repeat it. The City of Edmonds has reported robust tax revenues in recent years and has also increased city spending to fund a growing list of priorities. Yet during a recent City Council budget retreat, there were discussions about a possible future public safety levy. Describe how you will balance the growing list of budget wants versus being a steward of taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I've made no secret of my support of public safety, not by what I say, but what I do. The funding of 7 additional officers, the funding of a PSET problem-solving emphasis team, the funding of a storefront officer on Highway 99, the funding of additional firefighters to provide emergency medical care. We've had a previous city that was storing tens of millions of your tax dollars and it was doing nothing. It was sitting there. And that was depriving you of your critical services as our growing and aging and much in need population. So I have made it a priority to actually use the funds for those critical services and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen?
Words I will never hear is, Rosen, we have all the money we need to do everything we want in the city, right? Safety, as the mayor just said, has to be the number one priority. Safety has to be funded. And then I believe all the other things that you created government for and pay your taxes for. I'd like water to get to my house. I'd like it to go away. I'd like to be able to drive on roads. We need to make sure that infrastructure and the basics of government are being covered. And then I agree with Diane. I think we should be doing budgeting by priorities, because we will never be able to do all the things that we want, and the community should be involved in saying, here are the things we need, let's prioritize them, and then let's whittle away at them. I get a little worried also. I don't have a lot of confidence in national economy, and so I would like us to not be spending down our reserves. I would like to also make sure that we are using good assumptions when we're budgeting, so that we're targeting to numbers that we have a lot of confidence in, and that we aren't setting ourselves up for long-term expenses that we don't necessarily have a revenue stream to cover.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, and I'll echo a few of the other comments that were up here. I do think public safety is one of the top priorities that the government should offer its citizens. There's a lot of other issues that we're also dealing with, like unkept road maintenance and a lot of other issues that we got to keep up with. In terms of the levy itself, I'm not familiar enough with it to speak to it right here. I just think that budgeting by priority, again, something that is citizen-led and citizens could kind of choose which ones they feel are most important for them. I think that is a good approach. It also engages people in the budget process and brings a lot of folks out. Now, we have to do that in a way that is equitable, and we have to make sure that we're reaching people in the communities that tend to not be a part of those conversations. So it would be a significant undertaking to go about that approach. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're on to another lightning round. And I'm going to give you 10 seconds on this one. See how that goes. And we will start with Ms. Buckshness on this one. And this is just a follow-up to what you were just talking about. Name your top 3. Oh, thank you. Please. Thank you. You're right. See? What is it? I'm just skipping over
Darn
to
it.
Ms. Buckshness. Darn it. Okay, here we go. All right. Name your top 3 budget priorities.
My top 3 budget priorities, Highway 99, our multi-use walkable path, and public safety.
Okay. Mr. Rosen?
Safety, infrastructure, and safety.
Mr. Shipley?
Communications, infrastructure, and safety.
And Ms. Buckshness?
Watersheds, public safety, and communication.
Okay, thank you very much. On to question 9. And we will start with Mr. Rosen on this next one. Perrinville Creek flooding and erosion have been a problem for many years. As mayor, what would you do to restore Perrinville Creek?
Fix it. Would Wednesday work? It comes back in some ways to the budgeting process, right? We can do a lot of things pretty well and nothing very well. And so when we commit to something, we got to fix it. And, what's it going to take to make that problem go away? And Perrinville Creek is one of those. And again, it's not just we all live downstream from somebody. So we need to be working with others on doing it and making sure that we're doing the fix appropriately and solving all of the problems with it. But to keep kicking it downstream, no pun intended, isn't going to work. So truly my solution is just get on with it.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, I mean, this has to be a part of the budget priorities. If Perrinville Creek, that's been languishing for quite some time and continues to get worse. What's happening is we're having a lot of runoff, because of how we've historically developed our urban areas. Now, we have updated stormwater code that requires, or at least if you're going through the matrix, that you would have to infiltrate first instead of pumping it off or letting it run off. So some of this could occur through redevelopment. I don't necessarily think redevelopment is a bad thing. In these kind of cases, it could actually be helpful to the creek itself and our watersheds. But immediately, we just need to get in there and do some work to make sure that it's not continuing to wash away.
Thank you, Ms. Buckshness.
Well, the first thing we need to do is look at the entire watershed, which is the upper watershed, which is where Linwood is, the mid watershed, which is kind of where the area by Talbot Road is, and then the downstream where they plugged the creek 3 years ago. We were promised a full restoration plan, which we never received. In order to really get grant funding money, you need to have a total restoration plan. We have applied for some grant money this year for the lower Perrinville Creek, but it did not get funding because of the fact that there's more to it than just the downstream. You need to fix the midstream, you need to deal with what's happening up in Linwood and all of the runoff that is occurring there. So as mayor, I'm going to form a task force where we can use local scientists and complete a complete watershed so that we can get people, like we have had Rick Larson's group out to look at it. We can, in fact, get federal funding and state funding if, in fact, we have a complete, comprehensive watershed issue, because you can't fix one section and not the others.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, this is an example of something that looks easy, but is actually quite complicated. There are many players and actors involved. We've been, working very in all different ways, working with some of the landowners that are impacted by some of these flooding and blockages. BNSF Railvo with a culvert that they may be interested in expanding. The city of Linwood, we've been having very productive conversations with them since, a lot of that runoff is coming from the development from the city of Linwood. And our city staff, our public works department, has been working on many different options. So we're working on it, it's happening. We've been working with State Department of Ecology, the tribes. There's a lot of competing interests, protecting, making sure that the salmon can eventually get access to this creek they haven't been able to have. So it's getting there. It just, of course, is taking longer than we'd all like.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to go on to question number 9. And I just want to tell the people who are tracking the questions, in case you wondered about this, it looks like when I was reordering some things with adding in some new questions, we did get a little, it may not make sense, but it makes sense to me, and you've got the right list. So trust us, this is going to work out. All right, famous last words. Okay, this question is, we're going to start with Mr. Shipley. What is your vision for an Edmonds Marsh Estuary, and what steps will you take to help make that vision a reality? Is this something that you will prioritize in the city budget?
Yeah, I think if we're looking at, what is the final state that we'd like to see, we want to see a place where salmon could have habitat. We want to, continue to provide places for birds, and the estuary itself provides a buffer from, any kind of waves or storm events that may happen. It will have to be weighed out, where that priority lies, against all the other ones that we have. But I definitely think it's something that we need to put our money towards and put our effort towards to maintaining that estuary as it is, or actually improving it, not as it is.
Thank you. Ms. Buckshness?
As you know, I've been working on this for 13 years, and I know a lot about the Edmonds Marsh Estuary. I believe what we need to do is wait till we have the science before we spend any more money, because the science is going to tell us how much or what we need to do. But I envision, if you have ever gone to Meadowdale Beach Park, that was one of the RIA 8 first things that we did on our estuary run up the hill. That is something where you have a lagoon and you have the fish coming in underneath the railroad tracks, and it is a beautiful setting which we could do, but we need to get the science first to figure out what and how much contamination is, and that is coming in July. Another option that we've used is that we can talk to the governor and see if the governor will actually switch the property into another state agency. Council, Dave Teitzel and I did write a letter to the governor. It has been tabled until we find out about the science. But technically speaking, the governor could in fact transfer it to DNR, and in that
If you have 3 words, you can finish.
oh, I could go on a long
Okay,
time about it.
we'll be done then. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Nelson.
Yes, when Governor Inslee came to Edmonds, there were 2 things I talked about with him back in 2020. It was like February, and it was basically the marsh, and I think it was Highway 99. It's clear that there's always been a lot of interest, but the marsh has been not functioning properly for decades. We know all the things that are polluted there. We know all the papers and science behind it. But what the city's never been in a position to do is to be a player in this multi-jurisdictional ownership between Chevron, Unocal, and WSDOT. And now, for the first time ever, our city has an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, for a purchase and sale of this property so that we, the city, can be in a position to drive and restore this Edmonds Marsh, to bring back salmon, to have access. And so it's something that's not, whether or not we can, it's something we've been working on and are going to achieve, and I'm very, very excited for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen?
We stopped making land a long time ago, and anytime we can preserve any natural space, we ought to be doing it. And I think we all agree that the goal is let's have an estuary and just focus on how do we get to that. We do have a lot of science to start with. I agree with Diane that there's more coming and we need that. But there is a lot of science that we already have that we could start modeling and using that to start informing our decisions. And then we also need to know what the reality is of contamination and what does that look like to clean it up, and can we clean it up and to what level, and then explore the ownership models, some of which have already been talked about. In this case, information is power, but the vision is let's have a marsh that is an estuary.
Thank you very much. On to question 10, and we will start with Ms. Buckshness on this one. Reckless driving and speeding are occurring in many Edmonds neighborhoods, creating a public safety issue. The current traffic calming program is underfunded, and there isn't enough money to address problems that have been identified. How would you tackle this challenge?
Well, I have already recommended we need to put more money in the budget. We also are going to do a whole paving of Olympic View Drive, which we want to get the people that are part of this, on the street to come in and help us map that out. We do speed, and there is a lot of wreck. My own property has been hit twice by speeding cars, and now I'm just on 190th Street. So I think it's important that we start, maybe using traffic bumps, but we definitely need to increase our budget for traffic calming, and everyone that wants to have traffic calming in their neighborhood should get it, regardless of how it's rated or how it's classified by, because we have a strict criteria that we go by. But I do think that the citizens that live there see what's wrong with their neighborhood and their neighbor streets and the driving and speeding, and I think that should be taken care of that way.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, we need to be protecting our most vulnerable, which are our children, which is why this September we have now fully funded and we in operation at 3 different schools throughout our city, speed cameras between the school hours. Mm-hmm. And if you are going over 20 miles an hour when those kids are there, you will automatically get a ticket. It's utilized throughout the state and throughout the country. It is very effective. Maplewood High School implemented it, and speed dropped immediately in half. Secondly, we need to make sure that we are designing our roads. We could have 1,000 police officers and we would not catch everybody who speeds. But if we redesign our roads to narrow them down and to force folks to, they actually will slow down. And when you build a walkway and a protected barrier, you're starting to narrow those roads, and cars do slow down. So it is an engineering problem, and it is something that that has always been a priority of mine, and it continues to be a priority for the next 4 years.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosen?
Remember a week ago when you'd go up to a 4-way stop and it's like, no, you go. No, you go, right? We used to be those people. And now we aren't. And I think COVID had a little bit to do with that. And it's gotten a lot worse since COVID. We're ornery, and that's how we're taking it out on each other. I would like to believe that hopefully some of that will come back. But the solution to this is multifaceted. And in the work I've done a lot of traffic safety work, including safe schools and pedestrian safety for multiple jurisdictions. So I have a lot of this in my head. But we are going to need multiple tools. So some of it is building roads, building other kinds of traffic calming. Some of it is behavior. And it's not one fix, but we do have to deal with it. It is worse. We do have vulnerable populations. And as I've been talking to the community, I can tell you it is in the top 5 concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Mm-hmm. The issue is largely a design issue and how we've designed our streets for the last 60 years. We've made them excessively wide. A lot of times because of the fire department wants to get to the accident quicker, but they kind of create accidents by having wide streets to begin with. So we need to have street design that reinforces the speed that you would want instead of just relying on the police officer to be in the right place at the right time. I also think that we need to build a transportation system that works for everybody. So not just the folks that are 16 years and older that could drive a car, but for the kids that are not able to drive a car yet, they should have a safe place to ride their bikes. They should have a safe place to walk to school. And that comes from separating the uses. So you're separating vulnerable users from the roadway will improve safety. Now, getting down to the traffic calming issue, I think that the large part of the issue is the way those projects are graded out, and we need to change that.
Thank you very much. On to the next question. The City Council, and Mr. Nelson, you'll get the first answer on this one. The City Council in March adopted a climate action plan update with some ambitious goals for meeting targets to reduce greenhouse gases. What actions will you take as mayor to ensure these targets are being met, especially in the private sector?
Yeah, so one of the most important things about this climate action plan is that we hold ourselves accountable. So this year we are laying out our implementation plan that basically says, here are the things that we think we can do, this is the time we can do it by, and having regular check-ins about it. There are things we can do from a legal perspective, so like require for new multifamily to transition from gas only to electric only for heating and stoves. So that's one area. Obviously, we've already taken action on electrifying our city fleet. We're one of the first cities to have those Ford vehicles, the F-150s that are 100% electric. We have 10 more charging stations, making sure that we also change our infrastructure, changing to that electrical only society. It is something that I just feel strongly and passionate about, and was spearheading this whole update to our climate action plan and can't wait to implement it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosen.
Again, multiple tools. One of the ways when you're doing a market transformation like this that you do is you identify, here are all the options available to us, and then what is the likelihood and where do you get the biggest choice? That's why you got rebates on washing machines, on front-load washing machines, and on your toilet, because for the cost, they save the most water and the most energy. It's the same with climate change, identifying those kinds of where can we get the biggest bang for the buck, and you whittle away at it. Government is also a big consumer, and it can also help jumpstart certain markets. So the government can lead by example and also make a huge impact by itself. Then there are the legal opportunities where we can, as the mayor referenced, the different tools we can make to create incentives for electric vehicles and charging and making changes in our homes. What I was going to say is this is a big one for me. I like to inhale. I am part of a small group of people who are working on creating carbon labeling for products on a national level to help inform your decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, I think the difficult part of this is, that we were talking about the private sector. And in order to change a lot of the utilities that we currently use, there's going to have to be incentives to convert. A lot of those, there's incentives that are already out there. I think that we could do more. There's also state legislation that now requires all multifamily buildings to be electric only. So there are things that are coming, but to go back and look at the infrastructure or the homes that are already built, we're going to have to provide some sort of incentives in order to actually make those developments or those homes a little bit more green friendly.
Thank you. Ms. Buckness? Thank
you. Yes, our cap we did approve. It was more adaptative versus implementation. So rather than proactive or reactive, it was pretty much reactive rather than proactive. We do need to look at ways that we can be more proactive, and that can be in our code. Our tree code is still limping along. It's been 2 years now since it was passed or partially passed, and we still don't know where we are in the tree code. That's an important carbon sequestering. We also have issues relating to our housing and our housing stock, and we have yet to do housing codes to address these areas of having smaller houses or having more energy efficient houses or having cottage houses. So there's things that need to be done in relation to that. which would be great, but I do agree that we are moving in the right direction. We put solar panels on here. The Boys and Girls Club is thinking about putting solar panels. We do have a lot of solar panel programs out there.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to go over to some questions that were submitted by people who came in tonight, and if it takes me a little while to read some of these, it's only because I'm trying to read the handwriting. So my apologies if it takes me longer, but this next question, and we will start with, if my following correctly, Mr. Rosen, we'll start with Mr. Rosen on this one. What is your plan to promote a community free of hatred, intolerance, and discrimination, both internally and externally?
You know, in some ways this goes to when I talk about I'm done with the crazy. I think there are those people who are constantly trying to push us into that position. And I think we in this room, and there's critical mass in this community that says, not us, not today, not here. And we got to start saying it out loud and living it and standing in front of each other and next to each other and owning that. And that's got to be our core value, our soul, and we don't tolerate anything else here, and that we have to stand with each other. So it is the kind of thing we have to consciously move forward and talk to each other and make sure that every experience is one of those kinds of experiences. I don't walk in anybody else's shoes, and there are people in this room that I feel like we owe you an apology, and please don't give up on us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, I think, community free of hatred, that's an ambitious goal. I would love to get there. I'm not sure to what level the government should be playing in developing a community free of hatred outside of, that we have police enforcement and that we are providing opportunities for representation in city government. First, we should be doing no harm. As a city government, we should make sure that we're encouraging diverse voices to be a part of it. Our staffing should reflect the community that we work in. But to have a community free of hatred, I love the goal, and I think it's ambitious, but I'm not sure that we will be free of hatred in this world, unfortunately.
Thank you. Ms. Bechness?
Yeah, maybe in heaven, but not here. First thing I would do is get rid of the hate portal that the City of Edmonds has. I think that was something that really caused a lot of trouble or conflict among people because some felt it was overreaching, and then some people were, anyway, to just get rid of it. I'm going to go back to the whole community aspect of things and the nonprofits and being in the community and trying to network the various nonprofits together. Again, we have all of these nonprofits starting. We have all of these various business districts in town. There's a, Furdale uptown or Furdale market. There's a Perrinville market. There's a downtown market. Last year we had an uptown market. If we can continue to network as a community and support one another, that's the only way that I can see that us growing better together in kindness and just helping one another. And, I don't think we'll ever have a hate-free world.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. What's your plan to promote a community free of hatred, intolerance, and discrimination, both internally and externally?
Yeah. This is something I feel pretty strong about, and I think, it's no surprise, it shouldn't be a surprise that government has a role, whether it's institutional or systemic discrimination that exists just by the very nature of how we provide city services and historically how property lines have been drawn. So there are ways that we as a city can proactively address those things. But we always must be working towards a hate environment where there is no hate. And one way you do that is to build up those people who have been historically neglected, historically marginalized, historically discriminating against. We need to make a safe space for them. So that's why it's important, even though you may not understand what Juneteenth is, it's important for our Black Americans that they have a safe place, that they can celebrate, and that we can learn and not be thinking that something may feel uncomfortable for us is going to make us, compared to the challenges, the horrible challenges they have had to experience their entire lives to make it in our country.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is another question submitted from the group, and this is perfect for a lightning round, so here we go. And I think we can probably do this, well, I'm just going to give you 10 seconds in case you have to think about it. And we will start with Mr. Shipley on this one. Given that the primary race will probably not decide the race, who is the second best candidate in the race?
This is actually something I had to think about. If anyone knows, I left the city about a month ago. But I would work for Mike Rosen.
Okay. Ms. Buckness.
I don't care to comment on that because I think that there's a validity in each candidate.
Okay. Mr. Nelson?
Anybody who steps up and tries to, run or serve in public office, I will always get my hats off to them, and so I'm not going to get into that.
Okay. Mr. Rosen?
I love the question, but that's up to you.
Okay. On to the next question submitted to the group, and this from the group, and we'll start with Ms. Buckness on this one. Regarding the trees in Edmonds, at numerous tree meetings, we have been asked and told to preserve the tree canopy as well as increase it. Yet builders are permitted to bulldoze trees on lots that they want to build. There's more. New homes on. Let's see if I can get to the question here. Oh boy. Okay. Also, the larger condos, apartment buildings will, and some homes are being built with 0 lot lines, leaving no room for trees or permeable ground. What say you?
Well, I did sit on the tree board for 5 years, and I really understand the importance of trees, and we did, right tree, right place, and we did a couple of brochures about before you grab the chainsaw. It's unfortunate that development has, first of all, we don't have our tree code finished yet, but before we had the tree code a number of years ago, what happened is we had to have an urban forest management program, and that took a number of years to take place. So we saw a lot of pocket forests be raised down and these large houses go up. Once again, we need to get our design standards for the tree code in place because it was quickly put through and was not even vetted by council, but the simple majority moved things through quickly. And so it's a matter of getting our code up to date, but we need to also be conscientious of the fact that views are important, and we used to want to have different sectors where trees can go in, and we need to put more trees on 99.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I directed our staff to do a tree canopy assessment. We know that about 30% of our tree canopy is about 30% of our city, and I'm interested in increasing that. I think that trees are, they've been here long before we are, and they'll be here long after us. This idea that, we can manage them, that there's some sort of, like the Department of Agriculture, like it's a product, that, we've seen, a climate crisis right now that, we're not really good at managing nature. So if a tree wants to grow someplace, or if we need to provide help so that tree can grow someplace, it benefits all of us. It benefits our air, it benefits our water, it benefits our climate. And so whatever we can do is to incentivize, to regulate, to promote, have more trees in our city, I have been and will continue to be supportive of.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen?
This is an example of several other issues in Edmonds where we have this tension that goes on. So the tension between having trees and having more development. And part of the problem is we don't have a vision of what success looks like. So what does that day look like when we would say, That's enough. I mean, those are the right trees. We also don't talk about what are all the reasons we want trees. Sometimes it's you don't want that hill to come down. Sometimes it's habitat for critters. There is a lot of science that trees make us a lot healthier. I like to inhale, as I mentioned before, so trees help with that. And there's the aesthetics to it. So we really should wrestle with that and make a determination of this is a priority, right? Because then all other decisions fall through that filter. So we need to define what does success look like and work on that. And but we continue to have these kinds of tensions and these kinds of conflicts because we don't wrestle with the hard questions like that, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, so we do have a tree code. Maybe it's not the perfect tree code, but it is a tree code, and I know because we've been implementing it for several years now. It is a lot of work to implement, so we have to think of something that's easier to implement just because of the staff time that's involved in that. But we also have a conservation subdivision process that was developed a couple years ago that does allow flexibility for lot sizes and the dimensional requirements that we usually put on a lot. So you can move, the buildings around as long as the density remains the same. So we do have some tools in the toolbox for that. I would like to see us streamline the tree code a little bit better. And also, I think that we need to make good use out of the tree bank, which would provide free trees for folks that live within Edmonds.
Thank you very much. The next question is related to the we'll start with Mr. Nelson on this one. This is related to the status of deferred maintenance in the city, and there were no numbers given, but I know there's a lot. What do we need to do to get and stay on top, what do we need to do to get and stay at zero deferred maintenance, if that's possible? So, Mr. Nelson, would you like to tackle that one?
Oh yeah, no problem. So it's no surprise our buildings are a lot of our city buildings are very, very old. And we've had to, we've done a study, we've looked at, prioritize which structures and buildings need to be done. Obviously there's more money, it's more cost than we have revenue for. So we do have to prioritize that. We do have to think creatively about it. We have a bonding on it, so we are kind of doing it on a piecemeal, year by year. We're taking chunks out of it. It's maybe not happening as fast as we can, and in the long run, we're probably going to have to really kind of reevaluate the city spaces we do use, and are we utilizing them in their best ability? And so we will be doing some more studies in the future on that to make sure that we are utilizing the space we have. We're also growing, and we need more space, and so we may need more buildings, and do we need those old buildings?
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Rosen? Yes.
Also, it's a bad habit to get into, we have all these priorities, it's maintenance, let's move it over here, and then the problem gets worse, the costs go up. We have a 100-year pipe replacement program in Edmonds, which troubles me. So it's a discipline. I think it's the kind of thing where we say, here is what we have to do to make these buildings not fall apart. And I agree with the mayor. It would be great for us to do an analysis of what do we own, is this the best use of it, and what could we do better, and where should we be doing it, and what kind of a structure.
Thanks. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, so if you took a Venn diagram and you looked at, you want low density and you want low taxes, well, guess what gets put out of that Venn diagram, and that is our infrastructure. So you have a couple things that we're going to have to do. One, if we're having deferred maintenance, it means that we don't have the money to maintain it. Those are our roads, those are our sewer pipes, those are our water pipes. We need to think differently about our land use and our tax system and how it's done. I'm not saying raise taxes, I'm just saying that if you have higher improvement values on property, that the taxes go up, and then you're able to maintain all that stuff. But it's really expensive for low density and low taxes to actually be able to maintain their infrastructure. It's next to impossible. So we have to rethink how we're doing things. We also have to rethink, how we're building our streets. Many of them are wider than they need to be. We could be doing infrastructure that is going to be less demanding for being fixed, such as bike paths.
Thank you. Ms. Buckshness?
Well, council did pass a $2.3 million bond when bond rates were very low for infrastructure. We do need to look at immediate things, like the library roof needs to be fixed now rather than 2028 or whatever. We need to really look at what needs to be done for health reasons. And of course, if you think about it, during the Great Recession, which was 2008 on, streets were never even paved. Nothing was done for streets. So we are trying to do all this catch up. So again, we tried to do a bond levy in 2010 for streets. It did not pass. All we can do is try and move forward with utility rates have gone up tremendously since I've been on council, only because we do this pay-as-you-go program where they do calculate things and then tell you what they do for utility infrastructure completion or upgrades. But it really...
You knew that was coming, didn't you?
It is important that we look at all aspects.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to the next question submitted from people in the room. And we will start with Mr. Rosen on this one. What is your commitment to the arts community in Edmonds?
I love the arts. I think when people, I describe of where we live as at the corner of art and nature. And we live in this beautiful place, and the arts, lift the soul. But what else they do? I'm a big fan of tourism because people come, they spend their money, and they leave. So the arts, right? And we don't want to be paying that money. We want other people to pay that money. So I'm a big fan of bringing people here. And in the Northwest, you have a lot of options. So we have a thriving arts community. We haven't necessarily lifted them as well as we can. I made a list a couple months ago of like 120 organizations that have something to do with the arts, and they've never sat in the room together. Imagine what that voice would be, and if we pooled that resource. To live in this place with a thriving arts community, take that the rest of the Northwest.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
Can you repeat the question, please?
You bet. What is your commitment to the arts community in Edmonds?
I love the arts. I love going out to the arts. It's great that we have a theater here, not only here in downtown, but also over in Furdale. I think just being supportive of the arts bring a lot to our community. I'd love to see more arts out on Highway 99. I'd actually like to see it permeate other areas of our city besides just downtown. So I think working with different types of artists and different areas of the city would be something that I would love to explore.
Thank you. Ms. Buckshness?
Well, who doesn't love the arts? I've been involved with the art festival for a long time, 2005 when I retired. So it's really important. We do have a very good artistic community. We do have a very good base of volunteers for the art community. We have very good artists. But Brad brought up a really good thing. We need to move that artistic capabilities into all of our business sectors, Furdale, Highway 99, Perrinville. We need to really make sure everybody feels welcomed. And we can do that through taking our creative district, which we are the first creative district, I'm on that board, taking our creative district and creating Friends of the Creative District so that we can draw tourism out to these various different sectors so that, restaurants are considered a creative district item because it's restaurant, it's a culinary, or even a brew pub is alcohol. So we do need to move that out into our other areas.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, saying commitment to my arts is like saying my commitment to do I like puppies, of course. The arts have been here long before I was mayor and will be here long after. It is something that is ingrained in Edmonds. It is an arts community. The city historically has always been a willing partner and will continue to be a willing partner. We help house various different theater groups. We help, you name it. We're partnering. Obviously, folks have already talked about the creative district that was done before my time, but we're actually implementing it. We're actually going forward now and working to get more recognition and more, signage and awareness about it. And to everyone's point, yeah, absolutely. We need to figure out a way to get that commitment that we see in the bowl out of the bowl. And so how do we bring the arts up into different parts of our community and really feature and highlight them?
Thank you very much. All right, we just got a couple more questions left, believe it or not. So we are on to the next one, and we will start with Mr. Shipley on this one. You're going to yell at me if I'm wrong, right? You're just shaking your head, yes. Okay, good news. Describe your leadership philosophy and experience and your approach to working collaboratively with others.
Mm-hmm. So my leadership style is more of one of kind of like the servant leader. And that is somebody that embodies they value empathy, they value communication, they see the human for the human that they are. And I think that is something that also has to permeate to the director level and also the staffing level. I know that our staff really cares about the city and really cares about the citizens. So, I just want to continue to foster that. I think that would be a very important thing, just to better communications, to better outcomes. That's what I'd like to bring.
Thank you. Ms. Buckshness?
I kind of agree with Brad. My leadership skills is I like to be part of your circle. I want to roll up my sleeves and be part of your circle, but I also want to be the leader in making sure that we get things done and get things done as appropriately or as we need to with empathy or whatever. I have worked internationally with foreign dignitaries, ambassadors. I have been able to manage inspectors that didn't speak English. I went through the banking system as a manager. So it all depends on how we want to manage. And I believe the managing of the city of Edmonds needs to have an issue with the fact that we need to get someone like a chief of staff to help the mayor do the proper types of integration of all of the employees so that we can make sure that everyone is transparent and accountable and understands what's going on with the city, as well as keeping tabs with the council.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I learned the hard way that leadership is something that you can best really see not when times are easy, but when times are hard. And during COVID, without zero playbooks, zero help, having to make decisions that were putting the forefront of our residents' lives every single day, protecting collectively working with our staff, having to make decisions that were not popular, that were disruptive, that were hard, that people didn't agree with, didn't want to do. It's something that you really have to believe that you are doing the right thing, that you and empower those with you to inspire them to do the right thing. And so at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. Our leadership in our city is why today we are thriving. It's why our businesses are thriving, because we all collectively work together and supported each other.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen?
I just filled my pad. My leadership philosophy is, I believe that it is the vision that inspires people, and it's the vision that unites people. But you do have to understand what does success look like, so everybody is lined up in the same way, and you sort of put blinders on, and then you sort of unleash that human potential, and your job is to stay out of the way and help people. And leadership in this community means working with staff, working with the community, working with the council, working with the region. And being a leader in all those ways. It also means leading by example. I would get up at 4:30 and leave the house by 5, and not that I expect anybody else to do it, but it showed that I was committed and passionate. You never leave a room, right? It's also getting it done. What is the metric? You don't want to get to the end and say, well, that was fun. It didn't work. But you have to have metrics along the way so you can course correct. You have to never leave a room without saying who's going to do what by when, right? There's the practicality of leadership. And you got to be honest with people when times are hard.
Thank you. All right, a little curveball here, timers, and I'm going to throw something new in here. We did this 4 years ago, and I think it was very interesting. I want each of you, and we'll start with Ms. Buckshness as we're going in rotation. Each of you can ask one question of another candidate, just one, and you're first.
Just one.
Yes, to one candidate.
To one candidate. Well, since I was listening, let's see. Okay, how about Mr. Rosen? So what is your opinion on how the city should have spent the millions of dollars given to them from Sound Transit, the grant? What is your opinion on how the city should have spent that money?
My understanding of that money was it was intended to help create better transportation systems, and also that they would unite better. And I agree that we should have a multimodal transportation system, and that people should use the systems that are more comfortable to them, and that is a moving target, and we are changing as the demographic changes. So we should be building a transportation for where we're going, not for who we are today. I also believe that our transportation is, we're okay at north and south, but we're really bad at east-west. If you want people to get into public transportation and use it, it's got to be convenient and frequent and reliable, and I don't want to walk too many blocks, and I don't want to change too many times, and we are nowhere near that. So I think investing in those kinds of transportation systems and helping people find alternatives so that we can better move people and goods would have been a good use of the money.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
All right, I want to do a tough one here. Councilmember Buckshniss, if you're elected mayor, what will you miss about the city council?
That's awesome.
Well, if I'm elected mayor, what I'll miss about city council is that I am not in the driver's seat, and that I want to be an administrator. I want to represent you people. I want to create task force and fix the city. I want to implement budgeting by priorities. All of that is administrative work where the policy work comes in, which I will miss somewhat.
All right. Mr. Rosen?
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the mayor. Sounds like a game show. Ask the mayor. So as I have been working in the community, there are those who say the mayor doesn't show up, that the South County mayors meet and he's not there, the Economic Alliance. You took a hit for the letter that the mayor signed going to the county exec. So I'd like to give you the chance to respond to that.
Yeah, I think that, I have learned that what's most important is not what meetings you attend, but what you actually get done. And when you look at what I've accomplished collectively with our regional partners, our neighboring partners, the county elected officials, neighboring cities, could not have been done without working with others. So, if there's something that makes sense, but we always get opportunities to sign on letters. Some you sign on, some you can't. You'll find that it's just, you could spend all your time joining group letters and signing on to this thing or that thing and never focus on the things that actually matter for your city. And when I first got elected in these first couple of years, I have only and primarily been focused on our city, and it shows.
Thank you. Mr. Shipley?
All right, I'll direct this one to Ms. Butchess. As mayor, will you support safe infrastructure for vulnerable road users, even if it makes you wait an extra 25 seconds at a light?
Yes. I mean, who wouldn't? Well, first of all, I don't know what vulnerable...
I have quotes, but...
First of all, I don't know what vulnerable road...
So pedestrians and bicyclists, anyone that's not in a vehicle.
Oh, in terms of the bicycle lanes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am concerned about the bicycle lanes on Westgate and how that was, the Sound Transit money was used for bicycle lanes. I have been, and Councilmember Teisel have been looking into that because we do believe that Westgate is a area that was very contentious. It was a simple majority vote, and there were other alternatives that could have been done. But I will support the fact that they are having a workaround.
Thank you. All right. We are on to the closing statements. And we are going to start with Mr. Nelson.
Okay, I'm not ready yet. Hang on. Okay.
And you have 2 minutes.
All right. Our community is safer, our local economy is stronger, our city is more welcoming and more environmental than it was 3.5 years ago. But, I think you need to know when I came on board, it was different than any other typical mayor job, because when I came on board, people were dying all over the world from COVID. And my first priority every day when I came into that job was how we collectively as a city could keep everyone safe. I didn't get to go cut ribbons or speak at fundraisers for the arts. In a county with the first COVID case in this country, there was no playbook on how to respond. The government does not get to shut down. Criminals still need to be arrested. Drinking water still needs to flow. Sewage needs to be treated. The injured still need to be rescued. We worked with the food bank, the senior center, the chamber. We delivered supplies to assisted living centers. We provided daycare for parents in critical industries. We provided money for rent and food and those in need, and delivered vaccines for those who couldn't leave their homes, to communities with language barriers. We gave grants to over 150 small businesses in our city. That experience forever changed me, and it changed our city. It changed also what matters most. And my priorities for the next 4 years is that we make sure our community is more walkable, with a multi-use path that connects our schools to our parks citywide, that we have a downtown that character is preserved, that we have more parks and open space, that we continue to identify those open space with green streets, and that we restore our Edmonds Marsh. We continued our Highway 99 investment, including more infrastructure improvements and our new landmark site. It has been a privilege serving you these last 3.5 years, and I would love your vote to continue our great work together.
Thank you very much. You can applaud now if you'd like. Mr. Rosen?
I would once again like to thank our hosts and thank you for coming out tonight. I also want to thank my wife, Sharon Howard, for all the support she has given me, and I would like to take a minute to thank the other candidates for all the service you have already provided to this community. I have learned that over the years that not all fairy tales start with the words once upon a time. Sometimes they start with, if I'm elected, I promise. So what I encourage you all to do is don't take our word for it. Check us out, right? Talk to people who have worked with us and for us. There are people in this room who have worked with all of us, so please check us out. If you have questions for me, please reach out to me personally, and I would love to answer those questions. Check out our endorsements, right? Who else has worked with us and how do they feel about that? I'm honored to be endorsed by 5 previous mayors. Those people sat in a chair. They know what the skills are needed and what the temperament is to do the job, as have several other regional mayors, and I'm honored by that, and some 200 community members. I would also encourage you to think about what you've heard. Are we in it for the mission or the position? Are we nonpartisan? And who can best serve the entire community? What you've seen is this is an election year, so is our behavior a trend or a fad? It would be good to look at our past behavior. I am a problem solver, and I want to protect you, I want to protect this place, and I want to protect your hard-earned dollars. Trust has to be earned, and the way I want to earn your trust is through communication, engagement, accessibility, accountability, and transparency. Sounds like a job description. We all love Edmonds, and I think some of you came here tonight thinking that maybe we could do a little bit better. And I think we can do better. In fact, we must do better. And I think if we roll up our sleeves together, we will do better. And it would be my great honor to serve you and work with you as your 37th mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah. First, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank the other candidates. This is a very difficult process, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Even though we may have our differences, this is hard work, and I appreciate you guys being here. Second, definitely want to throw kudos to my wife, who's stuck with me through all this, and she's my life coach and everything else. So my wife, Rania, I love you. I think we all know Edmonds is going through a lot of change right now. From tonight, I think we've seen that, and we need a cultural change in our city's politics. And that is what I hope to bring. Over the last decade, I've engaged with the Edmonds community members on all sides of the political spectrum. There is more that unites us than divides us. And I know the fundamental decency and care of the people who live and work in Edmonds. I am truly optimistic about our future. Building that future together means taking a proactive approach that meets the diverse needs of our community. That means starting to rebuild trust in our government, making smart investments with your tax dollars, and supporting the whole city, from Lake Ballinger to the Waterfront, from Firdale to Meadowdale. We are a diverse community with diverse needs, and we need to respect and invest all corners of our community. These are the issues that I have fought for over my career. These are the priorities I want to bring back to City Hall and to each block in our city where you live, work, dine, and enjoy our great community. To accomplish this, it's going to take all of us to come together and renew a culture of collaboration and mutual respect. I am convinced that this is possible because I've worked with many of you in the past. And I have seen what we can achieve when we bring a value-oriented approach to tackling our hardest issues. Tonight, I ask for your vote, and I promise if you give me the honor to serve as your mayor, I will work tirelessly on your behalf and on the behalf of future generations that will love and cherish Edmonds just as we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Buckness?
I too want to thank all my fellow candidates and all of you for being here. As your mayor, I will roll up my sleeves and work alongside of you, creating transparency and accountability. I will continue to support our volunteering groups of boards, commissions, agencies, and community entities to help network various communities together to ensure everyone feels their voice is being heard and we can celebrate our diversity. And we will broaden our business district beyond the downtown so that every business owner feels their voice is heard. Spending tax dollars wisely has always been my strong suit, and I plan on implementing budgeting by priorities and putting the citizens first. A task force will also be created for long-range financial planning. Community safety and well-being will be addressed by moving part of the police department up to Highway 99 and putting sidewalks where needed. We also need to deal with graffiti, garbage, and stuff found in our community because a clean street is a healthy street. For addressing housing issues, I will once again bring the Housing Commission recommendations up and create and fast-track middle housing and multifamily design standards. I will delegate the planning board to the council. This is a mayoral first, because I don't think a mayor should be able to pick or remove a council member because those planning board members are very important to the council. So our watersheds are also in trouble. I plan on creating a task force to take care of this, and it'll include citizen scientists, stakeholders, and regional individuals, and all the people that I've worked with the last decade through my RIA 8 and Puget Sound Partnership Salmon Recovery Councils. Our code needs updating, and yes, I will create a task force for that. But I am the... Oh well.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates, again, for participating tonight. I also want to thank the Edmonds Waterfront Center, Edmonds Civic Roundtable, and I forgot to mention Reef Commerce Studio that videoed this so that people could watch it on YouTube tonight and record it. Thank you, Peter Harvey. It shows how much Edmonds cares that we filled the room tonight, and yes, there are lots of other people I hope will be watching remotely, but thank you again for coming out tonight, and I hope you have a good night.
Oh, man.